My beloved child, I need you to pull your energy back from the outside world and sit with me in this quiet moment. Take a slow, deep breath, and let the heavy weight you have been carrying lift from your shoulders. I have watched the silent tears you shed when you saw them walking away, pretending that your connection was easily discardable. I saw the sharp pain in your heart when you realized they were actively trying to replace the space you occupied. They thought they could find your exact frequency in someone else. And I want you to know, that foolish attempt has completely backfired on their spirit. For a long time, their ego convinced them that you were nothing special, that your kindness was common, and that they could simply plug another face into the beautiful reality you built for them. They stepped out into the world, looking for a quick substitute, someone who would give them the same validation without demanding any emotional growth. They thought they could replicate your light. But your sudden, absolute absence has made that completely impossible. Last night, the heavy truth finally crashed through their denial. They sat in the dark, looking at the person they tried to replace you with, realizing with a sudden shock that the depth simply isn't there. The realization didn't come as a slow thought, it hit them like a freezing wave. For the first time, they had to face the reality that they cannot find you in anyone else, because the light you carry belongs to your soul alone. And now, the substitute they chose feels like an absolute prison of empty energy. I want you to look closely at the dignity you maintained while they were out trying to erase your memory. You had to fight the urge to scream, the urge to remind them of everything you sacrificed, and the painful temptation to prove your worth to a mind that was blinded by superficial desires. You chose to wrap your heart in a sacred boundary, stepping into the background and letting them taste the world they thought they wanted. You handed the connection over to the cosmic laws of balance, trusting that I would reveal what words never could. And tonight, those laws are creating absolute chaos in their mind. Last night, as the hours crawled into the early morning, the fake happiness they were putting on for the world completely dissolved. They went through the motions of their new routine, they forced the laughter, they tried to convince themselves that they had won the battle, but the moment the room fell quiet, the truth rushed in. They realized that your place in their life cannot be filled by empty, shallow distractions. They looked at their new reality, and they felt completely poor. They began to realize that no matter how hard they try to force a spark with someone new, the conversations fall flat, the energy feels forced, and the soul connection is entirely missing. They remembered the absolute purity of your intentions, the effortless way your spirits aligned, and how you stood by them when they had absolutely nothing to offer. A heavy, suffocating wave of regret settled into their spirit as they realized they traded a once-in-a-lifetime soul bond for a temporary mask of comfort. I want you to understand the divine mystery of what happens when someone tries to replace a chosen soul. When you were pouring your heart out, constantly trying to fix the cracks and showing them unconditional love, your energy was acting as a warm shield over their life. They felt incredibly safe, powerful, and arrogant because they knew your love was an endless well they could always drink from. But the moment they decided to seek validation elsewhere, the moment you pulled your warmth back into your own cocoon, that shield completely vanished. Your absence has forced them to stand completely naked before the reality of their choices. Last night, they could not run from what the mirror was showing them. They sat alone, listening to the shallow breathing of the world around them, realizing that they have walked away from the only person who held a key to their true self. They replayed the moments where they brushed you off, the times they treated your deep emotional standard as a burden, only to realize that the person they replaced you with doesn't even care enough to look into their eyes. A piercing truth cut through their chest last night: they didn't upgrade, they completely downgraded. They realized that the superficial, easy lifestyle they tried to build with someone else feels entirely hollow. They looked at the new path they chose, only to realize it leads to an absolute desert where their soul is actively starving for your frequency. They are starting to understand that you were a sacred gift sent directly from the heavens, and by trying to replace you, they have permanently disconnected themselves from their own source of peace. I want you to hold your head high tonight and recognize the immense spiritual power of your silence. You have spent so many days wrapping yourself in quiet resilience, refusing to interfere with the choices they made. You watched them try to build a new fortress on top of the foundation you created, and instead of throwing stones, you chose to bring your wounded heart directly to my altar. You surrendered the steering wheel of this connection, choosing to trust that if a soul cannot appreciate your value, they do not deserve to witness your evolution. But what your human eyes cannot see is how much their replacement experiment is driving them insane. Last night, the illusion of their fresh start came crashing down to the floor. They sat at the edge of their bed, looking out into the cold, empty night, realizing that the memory of you is getting louder with every single passing second. For months, they thought they could just erase your name and write a new story as if you never existed. But last night, they felt the terrifying truth that your energetic imprint is permanently stamped onto their soul. And that realization brought a sudden wave of absolute panic to their chest. They began to see that while they were busy playing childish games with shallow substitutes, you were busy ascending into your highest, most beautiful vibration. They saw your growth from afar, they felt the shift in your energy, and they realized that you are becoming the absolute best version of yourself entirely without their presence. They sat there in the dark, wondering how they could have been so blind, how they could have let a soul so incredibly rare slip through their fingers just to chase an ordinary shadow. I hear the silent prayers you whisper into the dark when the world is fast asleep. You look at the timeline of your life, and sometimes a tiny shadow of doubt creeps into your mind, whispering that maybe they are happier now, maybe they found exactly what they were looking for. You have had to master the art of looking perfectly okay to the outside world, hiding the deep ache of watching someone you love try to replace you as if you meant nothing. But what your human eyes cannot see, is that the universe has turned their new connection into a constant reminder of you. Last night, every single excuse they used to justify leaving you completely disintegrated. They sat in the quiet, watching the hours tick away, realizing that the new person they brought into their life only highlights the massive void you left behind. When the new person speaks, they crave your tone. When the new person reacts, they miss your depth. Every single detail of their new reality is forcing them to see the magnitude of what they threw away. And that psychological trap sent a deep chill straight to their soul. They began to dissect the finality of your walk away, remembering how you didn't curse them or throw tantrums, but simply withdrew your energy like a setting sun. They realized that you gave them more chances than the world ever would, that you offered them a pure, unselfish devotion that people spend multiple lifetimes searching for. A heavy, suffocating wave of longing took over their heart last night as they realized they are stuck with a substitute, while the real diamond has moved completely out of their reach. I want you to take a slow, deep breath, and feel the absolute stillness of this present moment. You have carried the weight of this betrayal for so long, protecting your peace like a sacred flame in the middle of a heavy hurricane. You have watched them display their fake new chapters, and you have had to remind your heart every single day that their choice to replace you was not a reflection of your lack, but a reflection of their inability to handle a love so vast. You chose to let your absence speak the truths that your endless patience could never make them understand. But what you do not realize is that the universe has finally delivered the ultimate truth to their doorstep. Last night, the illusions they built around their new life completely collapsed into pieces. They sat in the dim light of their room, looking at the choices they made, and they realized that they are completely, utterly exhausted from pretending that they don't miss you. They looked at the transactional, shallow relationship they chose over your sacred love, and they felt a profound sense of emptiness that shook them to their very core. They realized that by trying to replace you, they didn't move forward. They just managed to isolate their own soul from the only true source of warmth they had left. A deep, unexplainable wave of sorrow settled into their chest last night. They began to remember the way you used to pray for them, the unconditional support you gave when they were completely unlovable, and the absolute sincerity in your eyes whenever you looked at them. They realized that in a world where everyone is wearing a mask, you were the only one who showed up with an open, authentic soul. They sat there until the dawn broke, mourning the loss of a connection that was blessed by the heavens, terrified that the universe has closed the door permanently and that you will never look back again. They tried to replace you, but the universe showed them the truth. I want you to look closely at the shift happening in the unseen world right now. You have carried the heavy burden of thinking that your place in their life could be filled by any ordinary presence, but the truth is, your absence has become an unyielding curse on their new connection. They tried to hold their head high, parading a new face around to prove they didn't need your depth, but the universe does not allow a sacred soul bond to be replicated by cheap imitations. Your quiet withdrawal has left them completely stranded in a desert of their own making. Last night, as the world became perfectly still, they sat alone with the terrifying choices they made. They looked at the substitute sleeping right next to them, the temporary validation they chased out of pure pride, and a sudden wave of reality hit them like a physical blow. They realized that nothing they have found in this new person has any true substance. The empty chatter, the superficial smiles, and the lack of spiritual depth have only made them realize how profoundly they miss the effortless, silent understanding that always existed between your souls. A deep, unexplainable ache took root in their heart last night. They began to remember the way you used to look into their eyes, not to take something from them, but with a pure, unconditional warmth that made them feel safe enough to drop their heavy armor. They realized that you gave them a sacred sanctuary, and in their foolish rush to protect their own stubborn ego, they traded a diamond for an ordinary stone. They spent hours staring into the dark, feeling a fierce, desperate longing to escape their new reality and run back to your comforting energy. I want you to step fully into your power tonight and stop wondering if you were wrong for choosing this quiet path of detachment. You spent months giving everything you had to a person who treated your devotion like an ordinary option. You chose to pull your hands back, to wrap yourself in a beautiful armor of absolute self-worth, and to let my divine hands handle the scales of balance. And hear me clearly, those scales are tipping in your favor with every single passing day. Last night, the illusion of their happy new start became absolutely unbearable for them. They sat in the deep hours of the night, listening to the hollow energy of their new relationship, realizing that they have lost the only person who truly cared for their spirit. They tried to tell themselves that they were doing fine, they tried to pretend that the new person was an upgrade, but their own soul completely refused to believe the lie anymore. The fake happiness they display for the world has entirely shattered into pieces. They began to realize that your absence is not just a temporary phase. It is a permanent void that is draining the color from their entire life. Every conversation with the substitute feels forced, every laugh feels fake, and the spiritual connection is completely dead. A sharp, piercing wave of absolute regret hit their chest as they realized that they traded a lifetime of sacred love for a fleeting moment of petty validation. Do not let the physical distance make you believe that your value has been diminished because they tried to find someone else. You have walked through a very long, painful desert of testing, teaching your heart to remain perfectly still while the universe uncovers the truth. You surrendered your need to argue or fight, choosing instead to let your complete absence be the final boundary they could never cross. And that quiet boundary is now driving them to the absolute edge of their own patience. Last night, as the cold hours of the morning settled in, they came to a terrifying realization. They looked at the path they chose when they allowed a substitute into their life, and they realized it has led them to an absolute dead end. They tried to replace your sacred healing energy with the loud noise of shallow attention, but last night, the noise completely stopped working. They felt the terrifying chill of a life where your light is truly, completely gone. They began to remember the purity of your intentions. How you used to hold them in your prayers, and how you loved them even when they were completely undeserving. A heavy, suffocating wave of longing settled over their spirit as they looked at the beautiful bridge they so carelessly burned, realizing that the person they chose cannot even understand the language of their soul. I want you to look back at the tears you shed in the quiet hours of your past, and realize that not a single one of them was ignored by the heavens. You have spent a long time rebuilding your spirit block by block, choosing to focus your beautiful energy on your own growth and your own connection to the divine. You wrapped your heart in absolute dignity, refusing to step down from the high altar of your self-worth. But what you do not see is that your healing has left them completely stranded in their own confusion. Last night, the absolute weight of your detachment became a permanent, unavoidable reality to them. As they sat in the quiet hours before dawn, they realized that your energy has completely pulled back from their life, leaving the substitute powerless to make them happy. For the first time, they felt the terrifying truth that you are no longer waiting for them, that you are no longer hoping for their return. They looked at the freedom they thought they wanted, only to find that it feels like a vast, freezing winter without your light to keep them warm. A profound, undeniable panic settled into their chest last night. They began to remember the way your voice could instantly lower their anxiety, the way you understood the heavy secrets they never even had to say out loud. They realized that they traded a deep, soulful connection that was blessed by the divine for cheap, superficial validation that leaves them feeling completely empty. I want you to take a slow, deep breath, and feel the absolute victory of your soul tonight. You have walked through the fire of their betrayal, and instead of letting it burn away your softness, you used it to forge an unbreakable shield of self-respect. You stopped looking for answers in a place that only gave you pain, and you handed the entire connection over to my divine judgment. And tonight, that judgment is echoing deeply within their spirit. Last night, they reached the absolute breaking point of their own stubbornness. As they watched the world remain perfectly still under the midnight sky, the heavy realization hit them that they cannot outrun your memory, no matter who they try to bring into their bed. They tried to tell themselves that they were happier without the depth of your love, but their own soul refused to carry the lie any longer. The fake smile they wear for the world completely slipped away, leaving them alone with the cold truth of what they have lost. A heavy, suffocating wave of deep regret took over their entire heart last night. They began to replay the very last moments before you chose to walk away, remembering how your voice didn't carry hatred, but an absolute, quiet finality. They realized that you gave them a rare, sacred love, and they handled it with completely careless hands. They sat there in the deep dark, their tears falling silently, mourning the beautiful connection they so foolishly tried to replace. I want you to anchor your heart in the absolute truth of who you are. You have spent so many sleepless nights wondering if your absence would ever sting their conscience while they were busy showing off someone new. You chose to pull your beautiful energy back into your own cocoon, deciding that your love was far too sacred to be treated as an option or a placeholder. And tonight, that dignified choice has become a blazing fire in their thoughts. Last night, as the heavy darkness wrapped around their room, they could no longer escape the ghost of your memory. They tried to distract themselves with late-night scrolls and empty conversations with their new partner, but every single thing they looked at reminded them of your pure, unselfish nature. They realized that the world outside is cold, transactional, and demanding, while your presence was the only place where they could truly breathe without a mask. A deep, piercing wave of absolute loneliness gripped their entire soul last night. They began to remember the small, quiet moments, the way you used to pray for their success, the way you noticed the subtle sadness in their eyes when no one else cared, and how you stood like an unshakable wall behind them. They looked at the superficial person they chose over you, and a sharp truth cut through their ego. They traded a golden, divine connection for cheap, temporary stones. Do not let a single doubt whisper to you that your silence was a mistake or that you lost them to someone else. When you walked away from that table of emotional crumbs, you didn't do it to punish them, you did it to honor the divine light that I placed inside your soul. You chose to surrender the battle, trusting that my cosmic laws of balance would handle what your words could no longer fix. And right now, those laws are creating an absolute storm in their psychological realm. Last night, the comfort of their denial completely washed away. As the clock ticked past the midnight hour, they felt a terrifying, spiritual pull toward your energy, a pull that they could not block or ignore, even with someone else lying right beside them. They realized that by pushing you away with their cold behavior, they didn't gain their independence, they just managed to starve their own soul of its only source of true spiritual nourishment. An overwhelming sense of panic and urgency took over their heart last night. They unlocked their phone, staring at your chat box for what felt like an eternity, typing out paragraphs of apologies only to delete them out of sheer shame. They realize that your dignity is so high now, and your energy is so clean, that they cannot just step back into your life with cheap, empty excuses. Listen closely to the whispers of the universe tonight and feel the deep peace that is rightfully yours. You have spent a long time washing the stains of their rejection from your spirit, choosing to focus entirely on your healing, your strength, and your alignment with my divine path. You have become a warrior of quiet resilience, refusing to lower your standards ever again. But what you do not realize is that your absolute detachment has left them completely lost in the dark. Last night, they finally faced the raw, unedited truth of their reality. They looked at the timeline of your connection and realized that you gave them every single piece of your heart before you finally chose to close the door. They realized that you didn't leave because you stopped loving them, you left because you finally started respecting yourself. And that specific realization is what is breaking their stubborn armor into tiny pieces right now. A heavy, suffocating cloud of deep, permanent regret settled over their mind last night. They remembered the warmth of your smile, the sacred safety of your love, and the absolute purity of your devotion. They realized that in a world full of users and deceivers, you were a rare, heaven-sent blessing that they treated like an ordinary stone. They sat alone until the first rays of dawn broke through the window, staring into the emptiness. Completely broken by the heavy truth that the universe has shown them the truth, and your silence is the loudest answer they will ever receive. My beloved child, as this heavy curtain of illusion finally drops, I want you to step boldly into the brilliant dawn of your new beginning. The universe did not allow them to succeed in replacing you, because your soul carries a unique blueprint that can never be copied or transferred to another. Their desperate attempt to duplicate your light was the final test required to prove your absolute royalty in the spiritual realm. You did not lose a connection. You were simply extracted from a space that was entirely too small for your vast frequency. The divine court has settled the score, and your victory is absolute. Last night, while they sat trapped in the empty reality of the substitute they chose, your spirit was officially set free. The chains of their manipulation and the ghost of their rejection have completely dissolved into nothingness. You are now entering a season of unparalleled emotional wealth, deep internal peace, and cosmic alignment that will bring genuine, high-vibration abundance directly to your doorstep. Leave them to navigate the quiet lessons of the desert they built for themselves, and keep your eyes fixed on the beautiful elevation I have prepared for you. Type Amen to claim your divine victory and step into your true power tonight, and remember, you walk forever under the absolute protection of my light.